Today's story is called Golden Opportunity. It goes like this. Under the canopy of gnarled old trees, flecks of light played across the ground as Lucan rode slowly beneath the beaten path. The fragrance of wild roses filled his senses, and he smiled. Soon, my love, we will be together forever, he thought to himself. The old hag has foreseen it. Arriving at a blacksmith's cottage, he greeted the charcoaled man. The blacksmith wiped his hands on a cloth and gave his friend a hearty shake. "Hello, Lucan. I've just completed your new helmet. Here, try it on," he said, handing it to him. Lucan shoved the helmet down over his head and opened the faceplate. "Feels good," he said. "How do I look?" "Looks good," the blacksmith said. "A fierce but handsome knight. Now all you need is a dragon to slay." They laughed. "Dragons indeed," the knight laughed again. "I'll be happy if it pleases Elise." "Are you seeing her yet?" he inquired. "No, frankly, I'm not," Lucan said. "I wouldn't know what to say. I'm no good with women. I want her to love me, but we never even speak," he chuckled. "I think it would be easier to fight dragons and say hi." "That's no way to love a woman," the blacksmith said. "When I first met Calla, I just went right up to her and said, 'Bless the heavens, are you an angel?' In 6 months we were married." "Yeah, see, I can never do that," Lucan said. "The problem with you knights is that you live in a fantasy land. Opportunity to fight non-existent monsters and getting paid by the realm. If you had a real job, maybe you wouldn't feel so flighty," he said. "You wound me, dear friend. There really are strange beasts in the forests. I have killed some myself and carted them into the capital city. You can see their skeletons on display in the Royal Museum," Lucan defended. "That's real convenient. Kill an animal, deflesh it, and mount it for display in some faraway place where commoners never go. Why don't you get the Royal Museum to set up a traveling display so the rest of us can see what we're paying out our salaries and taxes for?" "For you, my friend, I'll do it, at the next round table," Lucan said, leaning over and tugging at the helmet. "Help me get this thing off." They worked it off slowly, chafing the knight's skin as it came. Guess I'll have to open up the flare a little more," the blacksmith said, frowning as he carried it back to the workbench. "Until later," Lucan said, and headed for the door. "Remember, if you don't start kissing Elise pretty soon, someone else will," the blacksmith called out. "I'll keep that in mind," he said, closing the door behind him. The knight mounted his steed and rode off. "After tonight, I will know what to do," he thought. As sunlight turned to twilight in the forest, the sounds changed. The day creatures returned to their nests and holes, and the night creatures emerged. The enchanting began. It was dusk when Lucan found himself at the doorstep of the old hag. Dismounting and tying up his horse at a post, he heard footsteps in the darkness behind a thicket to one side of the trail. His hand found the door, and he pushed it open, barring himself inside. "Not in the habit of knocking," the old hag said from her chair by a lit candlestick. The knight turned quickly and flattened his back against the door. He suddenly realized how silly it must look for a knight to panic. He relaxed a little and composed his words. "Oh, sorry," he said at last, running his hands along his gambeson. "I heard footsteps outside, and without my armor, I suppose I felt a little vulnerable." "Pay no attention to that," she said with a little cackle. "It's just my wild beast, but he's tied up." "Oh," he said, trying to sound relieved. I guess you know why I'm here." "Of course. I am old. I'm not senile," she said. "No, of course not," he said. "Sit down," she commanded. He sat on a chair in front of hers. "Now," she began, "you want to be lovers with Elise, but it will cost you," she said. "You have moved too slowly to attain her love, and now it is more difficult for me to bring her to you." "I wish I'd met you sooner," he said, "but what's done is done. What is your price?" "You must go to the chambered tomb of Maze Howe and bring me the golden locket of Octavius Caesar," she said. "Then I shall show you how I shall use it." "The old barrow is full of many restless spirits. The stories are legion," he stammered. He took a deep breath. "How soon do I need to go? Can I do it during the day when it is safer?" "No, you must go tonight. There will be a spirit named Hekon. Ask him for the locket. You will know what to do next," he said, her eyes narrowing. "Yes, I suppose I will," he said, unsure of himself. He stood up. "Until then." She nodded. He turned and let himself out. Lucan rode through the night to the forbidding old hill. He dismounted and lit a torch. The gaping hole in the hill with its toothy rocks protruding from the eroding soil reminded him of the mouth of some huge monster. The hair on his neck bristled and a sweat broke out on his brow. He gingerly walked inside, aware of every little sound. Spiders and crickets darted to and fro on the cobbled hallway floor. Further inside he came to a wicket in the rock. Beyond it was a mausoleum of odd-shaped rocks. Could they be old bones scattered by rodents over the ages? The room refused to yield its secrets to the flickering light of the torch. "This must be the place," he thought to himself. Swallowing hard, he called the name of Hakon. He waited. The sound of his own voice in the close quarters sounded suffocated, like he might drown in the darkness. He called again, louder. "Up! Up!" Was this the voice of the spirit or a belated echo of his own voice? Following the direction of the sound, he looked up. Above head level, there were runic inscriptions. He held the torch high and tried to read them. Most of them were illegible at this angle, but there was one he recognized. It was a directional guide. Looking further down into the chamber, he saw a large slab of rock. It appeared to be a bench, but perhaps it was movable. Setting the torch to one side, he pulled an iron grappler from his belt, linked it behind the rock, and pulled with all his strength. The rock moved, revealing a small staircase leading down. He crouched down into the claustrophobic space as if descending a ladder. He grabbed the torch as he came to head level with it, then continued down. The torch revealed a secret room with Roman ornamentation. The room was stripped of its former wealth, except for a bench against one wall, where he saw a variety of small, shining artifacts. "The golden locket must be here," he muttered, rummaging through the items with one hand while holding the torch close with the other. Finally, he came across a chain, half buried in detritus. He held it up and let the light reflect off its yellow surface. He could make out the bust of a Roman emperor. "This must be it," he whispered excitedly. He crossed over to the staircase and began to ascend. A noise above caught his attention. He stopped, daring not to even breathe. Was someone up there? Would they push the benchstone back in place, trapping him? No, it must be my nerves, he thought. He continued up the stairs, replacing the benchstone, and hurried outside. His pulse was racing. His horse whinnied at the sight of the torch. "You're afraid too," he said, stroking the mane of his trusted companion. Then he extinguished the torch, mounted up, and returned to the old hag's cottage. Knocking at the door, it creaked open. The old hag was still seated by the candlestick. "You are a quick worker," the old hag said, "but you are thirsty. I can see you've had quite an experience tonight." The familiar words of the living, even this old hag, were soothing to his frayed nerves. He found himself calming down. "Yes, thank you," he said as she poured him a victual. "A special brew for special occasions," she said, raising her own goblet and toast. "Indeed," he said. He drank down the liquid and smiled, studying the goblet. "This is a tasty beverage." "Have a seat," she commanded. He sat down. "Now let's see the locket," she said. He pulled it out of his pocket and held it up so it twinkled in the candlelight. "Not an easy retrieval," he said, but it was fairly straightforward. He pocketed it and yawned. "What's next?" Just then he closed his eyes and fell asleep. Lucan awoke to the morning sun streaming in through slits in a shuttered window. The old hag was gone. He felt his pocket and noticed the locket was missing. He groaned. "I've been tricked," he said to himself. By the candlestick he saw a note from the old hag. He read it aloud. "True love is born of personal commitment, not hocus pocus. Thanks for the golden locket. It shall buy me passage to my homeland. If only you would spend time with Elise, you would have your true love already." What's that supposed to mean? He thought to himself. Perhaps I should find out in person. He stretched and yawned, then got up and left the cottage. Soon he found himself at the doorstep of Elise. "Hello," he called out. "Is anyone home?" A beautiful maiden with long curly hair appeared from the heavy door. "Oh, good morning, Lucan," she said, beaming him a radiant smile. "What brings you to my home today?" "I've come to ask you," his voice trailed off as he looked with dismay at another face appearing beyond the open door. He began again. "That is, I have come to ask you if you have anything that needs mending at the blacksmith's. I was in the area and a shop is my next stop." "That is very kind of you," she said. Her words were so pleasant, so perfectly formed, he wished he could kiss them off her lips, but his eyes continued to catch the stare of someone inside. "But I'm not in need of any repairs at the moment," she continued. "Galeron has taken care of these things for me." She motioned to the person inside. "Have you met my betrothed?" she said. Galeron stepped outside. "Galeron, you're a lucky man," he said, crestfallen. "Well, I suppose I'll be going." Lucan turned his horse and rode back into the forest to weep. The end. Hope you liked it. Let me know in the comments down below.